Hello and welcome to the first workshop in the Art and Photography category. This is a workshop hosted by the Townships Young Voices project. So today we will be doing the first workshop of the series and we will be focusing on Visual Art 101. Let's get started. So I'll start by quickly presenting myself a little bit. I'm Cecilia. I am a recent graduate of Bishop's University where I did a BA in English literature as well as film and fine arts. I've always liked to try all sorts of different art forms. I do a bit of sculpture, I also draw, and I really like making animated short films. So yeah, I'm really interested in all things art, which is why I'm super excited to be hosting the art and photography workshop specifically tonight. So art and photography can seem like very broad categories, but what they have in common is that they're both images. And images have a function, they have a purpose, there's a reason we use them. They can convey a feeling, such as this abstract artwork. It's hard to tell what this is. It's hard to say if there's a message there. There might be, there might not. But mostly this image's main goal is to convey a feeling to us. And it's not specific what it is because it really depends on the viewer's interpretation. Then we have images that have a much clearer purpose. You can take a second to maybe think, what is this image doing? What is this image telling us? It's a message about peace. It's a message about don't do war. The flower is a symbolism of peace, and holding the white flower in front of these armed soldiers clearly means stop war, don't fight. And nothing here is written. It's only the image and the symbols and how things are arranged that tell us a whole story visually. So image can be quite powerful to tell us something, but sometimes the message isn't clear, sometimes the feeling isn't clear. Nevertheless, there are elements that still make a good image. So let's look at some key components of visual communication, things that can help us say what we want to say with our images. So to start off, I'll talk a little bit about medium because it really matters what medium you pick. So how do you render your image? Is it a drawing like the example on the left, or is it a photo? The tool that you're going to use to make your image is going to have an impact on the way the message comes across. So maybe take a second to ask yourself what's different about these images. Well, clearly they were made using different mediums. They're all horses though, it's all the same subject, but you can tell that these horses would be used in different contexts. For instance, which one would you use in a children's show? Which one would you use in a science book? Which one would you use to advertise for races? Well, you wouldn't use the same horse. You wouldn't use the My Little Pony one for the science book because it does not look like an anatomically correct horse, although it's very cute. But the way you render your image is going to make your message come across differently. Another element is composition and framing, which really just means how you arrange the elements in your image. I often use film as an example for this one because film really uses composition all the time. It's really a great storytelling tool. There are many ways to name composition. For instance, the one on the right where the figure is not facing us, it's a good example of symmetrical composition. And the way colors are arranged in the frame, the way that movement is represented, the way that there seems to be lines making your eye travel where you need in the right order. There are, as I mentioned, names for some of these. For instance, the one on the top left is called the golden ratio. It makes sort of like a spiral that slowly goes down. It's based on pi, the number, and it's really a complex mathematical ratio that has been used for hundreds of years in artworks in general, and it's one example of how you can arrange the image really carefully, and you really curate the way you present the image. There are diagonal compositions, some are entirely symmetrical, some use foreground, background contrasts. So yeah, you can Google them. There are names. You don't necessarily need to know the names, but it can be a useful tool when it feels like your image is flat or something dynamic is missing. Maybe try some different compositions. Just try to arrange the image in a different way, and it might make the subject come out much more differently. Another tool in composition is framing, when you put something around the image, again, to make us focus on the right thing. The painting on the left uses just the natural rock formation around this landscape to sort of cut out the sky, to cut out as a different shape in negative space. Colors. We can talk about colors for hours. There are so many cool things that you can explore. So I will name a couple that are interesting, but you can take a whole color theory class and still discover things about the theories behind colors. So there's such a thing as the color wheel, and it's how the colors are arranged on a scale, and the way you pick them around the color wheel will make different effects on your painting or artwork. So the example on the left is a painting that uses complementary colors, which are colors that are facing each other on the color wheel. So it makes a really cool contrast, a really cool difference. It can be jarring, it can be really compelling as well. The example on the right uses analogous colors, which are colors that are neighbors on the color wheel when they're just next to each other. So they're really similar tones. They can be like sort of in the same family. So it makes something really unified, and it makes the atmosphere more consistent. And that can be also a cool effect. In the color wheel too, there's one half that is considered warm and the other that is cold. And it really can make the whole mood of the image warmer or colder, and it influences how we feel towards it, because something that is cooler will normally be considered calming or sad sometimes, whereas the warmer colors are more energetic, more vibrant, more aggressive. This is just generalizations. It's not always true, but it can make the mood different, and it can play with the feelings and our perception just using different colors. Proportions can also be important when using colors, because sometimes you want them to look balanced. This is one ratio that is often used to balance three different colors being used. You have the 60-30-10% rule, where you use 60% of a main color, 30% of a secondary one, and just a hint, 10% of an accent color that's really on a different range. And that can make something that looks more balanced, and it's pleasing for the eye to see that things are not too overpowered. We usually know monochrome as something that is black and white. It means that there is just one color. Actually, mono means one, and chrome means color. So it just means one color. It doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be gray. You can have something that is, like the example on the right, monochrome orange. You can have monochrome in any color. It just means that there is just this color in different shades. So it can be fun to experiment with these, and again, play with the light and shadows instead of a variety of colors. Speaking of light and shadows, you have contrasts and values. I've been talking about contrasts with colors. It also works with things that are light or dark. So contrast just means a jarring difference between something that is in one extreme and the other. So the example here, the main contrast is between the black and the white. So you have the darkest shade next to the lightest one, and they're just put right next to each other, and it makes a good contrast. It makes a compelling difference. I mentioned values as well, and values just means how generally dark or light is it in the whole picture. So you have on the far left what is considered low key, which is the darkest possible. Everything in the picture is really quite dark. You can have something that is mid-key, where you're more towards the gray overall, and something that is high key is really overexposed. It's really quite white, and it's really much lighter in all the aspects of the image. Values work with color, of course. It's easier to understand in black and white, but you can have something that has really high key values or low key values overall. The painting on the left has really light values, all pinks, whites, little browns. Even the thing that looks the darkest, let's look at the brown branch that's on the top of that painting, is actually probably closer to mid-gray. There's no black at all in this image, whereas the painting on the right has much darker. It's all really dark values, and if you look at the highlight on the table that looks white, it's probably also closer to mid-gray. There is no pure white at all in this image because everything is in the darker values. Focus is easy to understand when we think of photography because it just means where is the lens focusing, where is the image the clearest. But it works with artworks as well. It just means where is everything the clearest and where is our eye going first. You can have things that are blurry, things that are clear, or you can have something that is focused throughout, that has nice clarity everywhere. But you can still use depth even without the blurry aspect. Usually we have something that is called the foreground, that is closer to us. Then you have the midground, just standing somewhere in between. And the background is what is really further from our eye, really as far as you can go. That works, of course, with photography, just with the lenses. It isolates our gaze in compelling ways. Lastly, I'll mention point of view, and it simply means how are we standing as a viewer, and what's the angle you're using looking at the subject. For instance, I used the same subject, a city, both times, but one point of view, you are gazing up, and the other point of view, you're gazing down. And the feeling is entirely different, the effect is different. On the left, you can perhaps feel overpowered, you're feeling small, you're feeling crumbling and being crushed by these huge towers. But the same subject on a different viewpoint, it's freeing. You feel like a bird, you feel like you're flying. So a different point of view will really give you a different feeling, even on the same subject. Point of view is really influenced by angles, and I'm using film again because there are so many terms to talk about camera angles. You can Google them, and there's a ton of good videos that explain what's a Dutch angle, what's a close-up, what's a long shot, and these are just technical terms that can create different effects. But what I want to mention is that the way you position your camera or your standpoint in your artwork is going to create a different effect, and you can play with how much of the subject you want to show and in what angle, and it's going to create some cool effects. I keep mentioning film and photos, but of course it works with artworks. It just takes a little more technical efforts because perspective can be really hard to draw. It takes some training, but of course it can be learned, and it really creates cool effects when you can use perspective, close-ups, and a variety of angles to tell your stories with images. So that's it. That was the first workshop. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And in the meantime, you can grab your cameras, pick up your pencils, and go have fun. So see you next time. Bye!